Thank you for joining me for another quick hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn. I'm the mental MacGyver, providing luxury level support and coaching to executives, entrepreneurs, celebrities, and athletes. With me today, I have Glady Baradaran. She has 15 years of HR experience and a love for organizational development. She's based in Canada. I have Simon Coles. He's the CEO of Amphora Research Systems, where they free scientists from the tyranny of paper. He is also the founder of the Better Conversations Foundation. And I have Rick Alcantara. He does public relations, digital marketing, and crisis communication at Rick Alcantara Consulting. The question I have for you today: how do you handle gossip when it's about you?
Part of me, when I first listened to this, is like, well, it depends if it's good gossip or bad gossip. But actually, gossip is bad. It's always corrosive. And I don't know really how to get rid of it, except that moving to an all-remote team kind of stopped it in its tracks. I don't know how to handle it really, apart from wish it would never happen, try and create circumstances where it doesn't, because I don't know how it helps. It creates in-groups and out-groups.
I agree with Simon. We really have to try to diminish it. It's not a good behavior in any sense. To handle it up to now, as a young person, I used to get upset about it. I used to like say, oh my God, what am I going to do to retaliate? Like your brain goes. I think with age, I'm more like, the gossiping about you, do it. Join the gossip. Give them more information. Right. At least give them the right information. So join in. Tell them. If it's out there, then you can't hide it. Let's just talk about it and move on.
You can try to ignore it, like you said. I remember one time in high school, there was somebody who was gossiping about me, and I kept hearing it, and then finally I just had to confront the person and just say, what's going on here? Why are you doing this? What's the purpose? What's the outcome here? And finally, after we had this conversation, he just stopped doing it. But it was just strange that it was happening.
I had a situation when I was in my 20s where I left the office to go to lunch. My husband met me. He had a single rose, which was really sweet. So I get into his truck, I take the rose, he kisses me on the cheek. And as we're leaving, I see a woman who's in my department. She's outside the building smoking, and she's glaring at me. And I'm like, whatever. Didn't think any two things about it. By the time I got back, the entire department was up in roars about the fact that I was having an affair.
Oh.
She had gone back into the office and told everybody that I'd gotten into a truck and gotten a rose from somebody and gotten a kiss. And everybody knew I was married. And it took me weeks to get people to understand that man was my husband. I am married to him. That's not an affair.
It's really interesting that was their first go-to. What an assumption.
The negative comes out though. I feel like the gossip often is not a positive thing, because there's something in human being psyche that you just like to move towards negative and talk about things and make it bigger. Positive gossip is not really exist. I don't even think we call it gossip. It would be like praise or somebody talking behind your back.
Yeah, we've talked about it as being just kind of person-to-person kind of conversations, but there's also the online gossip. If you're a notable figure in your company, you bother to address it? Do you ignore it? A lot of times you're just things that are going to be out of your control. And also, if you try to address it, sometimes you could just feed the beast and the problem gets bigger because now you've created awareness for it, and more people will just kind of pile on to us. So you've got to make a real conscious decision as a leader or as a company or both as to, is this something that's going to be worth us addressing, or do we just kind of let it go?
Yeah, speaking as a leader, is it a problem to manage, or is it a symptom of an underlying problem in your culture? It's not good.
No. Yeah. When I work with teams, one of the rules we kind of create, or agreements we create, is we don't gossip on this team. If you have something you want to say, you go say it directly to the person. And if you can't say it directly, you go bring somebody with you to facilitate the conversation, but you don't gossip, and you don't allow people to gossip with you, because gossip requires two people, somebody to do the talking and somebody to do the listening.
Yeah.
And going and telling somebody else. It feeds in each other. And then often the message even changes. So somebody make a small gossip about something, the other person goes to the other person and just adds to it or something. It gets even worse when in groups. Yeah, definitely.
And you do it online, it goes from one person to their 50 followers to a couple thousand followers. And then, like you said, people pile on, and now all of a sudden it becomes like an emergency situation.
And Rick,
Yeah,
you
I
made the point. Do you address it or do you not?
Now, what you can try to do as an organization or an individual, you can try to say, hey, can we discuss this offline? That's your best course of action, because if you try to do it publicly, or if you try to silence the person, that's even probably a bigger problem, because then companies get accused of silencing their critics, and that can create a problem.
I think you have to hold people accountable. Like, in my view, there are no innocent bystanders. If there is gossip going on, then you as the person hearing it need to invite whoever's gossiping to go and address that with the individual person and maybe question their motivations for it. But it's deeply damaging.
And I think on the receiving end, have some questions. I mean, in Better Conversations, we talk about ask, what did you see or hear that made you think that? Or what did you see or hear that brought you to that conclusion? And if you dig into it a little bit, you might learn that it is just bitterness or whatever's going on.
But it could also be something very harmful. It could be very bigoted, racist, misogynistic comments that really cut to the core and really can alienate the people they're talking about.
Yeah, we're a small company, but I've had us ripped apart by one individual who just turns everybody against each other by getting individuals one-on-one, sharing a little bit of privileged gossip sort of thing. You're special. Then they'll go and say something different to another person. And what they're relying on is that everybody feels special to be in the know, but nobody talks to each other.
Right.
That's why you need those set rules then, as you said, Dr. Robyn. I feel like in any organizations, in their policies, even smaller teams, you have to have what is the game's rules and what are the things that are acceptable or not. And when it happens, you decide, is it really high level? Is it affecting people's lives? Because there's many level of gossips. Some of them you can just let go because there's so much change happening that tomorrow there's another gossip, all that. So you can slowly change the culture towards it. But if it's big, then you really have to act though in organization. It scares me, Rick. You're 100% right. This is not just a one-to-one thing. You can get 50,000 people about the organization and ruin reputations of the companies.
I disagree respectfully.
Oh,
And this is why we have better conversations, because I think even small gossip is corrosive because it creates in-groups and out-groups. And one of the reasons for having better conversations is to give people the power to stop gossip and politics from happening at source and to hold them accountable for that behavior. You're talking about having policies and that sort of thing. That's great, but you've got to have an enforcement mechanism. And certainly here in the UK, I need to be able to give people the chance not to exhibit those behaviors. So I can say you can't do that, but I can't fire you until I've given you the opportunity to be trained to do some alternatives. And that's what Better Conversations was developed internally for us, is so that I could say, I don't like that behavior. Here's an opportunity to do about it a different way. And if we're here again, then I've paved the way to put you on a performance improvement plan and exit you if need be. But that's what I feel I need to do as a business leader.
That's the same thing I do when I help teams create communication fingerprints, which is create that foundation of this is the expectation and this is what you're going to be held accountable to. And I feel like a lot of organizations don't have anything around gossip as far as what their expectations are, what they'll hold people accountable to.
One of the lines you got to draw is it free speech? Is it gossip? Is it opinion? Or is it libelous communication?
I have a right to expect constructive, responsible communication inside my organization. So if you want to go and bitch about somebody, I don't want that. I'm not paying for that. Then we all get frustrated. We all fall off the wagon, as it were. What I want is whoever is being spoken to be able to say, hey, what do you want to do here? What would you like to have happen? And I think that was the sort of insight that I had, is we had people trained in communication techniques, but we only had a few people trained as experts. And what I realized is actually I need to train the entire organization, because you never know who might get frustrated and start to slip into something a little bit more negative.
I agree with you, Simon. I agree with you. Going back to that accountability, because where are we to understand at what point certain gossip is no good anymore? Where is that gray zone? So I feel like we have to stop it, knowing from the beginning we decided saying gossip, generally we're just against it. We have to nip it right from the beginning. I agree.
Yeah. So I view it as a first aider kind of thing. It's like emotional first aid. You're feeling a bit negative here. How can we help?
I know for me, if gossip's about me, I want to go and say to someone, hey, let's have a conversation, because that's not true. But unfortunately, by the time you hear it, it's probably spread pretty far, and catching it and fixing it's a challenge. It just is. I agree with what we've said here. Organizations should not allow gossip to happen. It's an unhealthy behavior. That is our 10 minutes. Thank you for having this conversation with me, and I look forward to speaking to each of you again really soon.